What's up, Jen Now? Hope you guys have had a great night so far. I'm so sorry that we can't be there tonight. I really wish we could be, but Ryan and I are actually in quarantine this week. But I'm glad that I can be with you virtually. So last week, we started our new series called Vibes, and we're talking about emotions. We're talking about not letting our emotions be the boss of us. Last week, we talked about the fact that because of Jesus, we don't have to let our emotions rule because Jesus is a much better boss than our emotions anyway. At one point during the sermon last week, I had you all think about a certain emotion in your life that tends to control you more than any other emotion. And this week, we're actually going to talk about a specific emotion that I think might be that one that you thought of last week for some of you. So here's my question. Have you ever experienced road rage? If you have your license or your permit, I'm sure you have. I'm sure as you're driving and you feel like someone's going too slow, or they cut you off, or they didn't use their blinker, you got really kind of irrationally mad at that person, that other driver. Or maybe if you don't drive, you've seen your mom or your dad or your brother experience this, or maybe you've been on the reverse side and your sister is a really crazy driver, and when you ride with her, people have road rage towards her. Here's the thing, on or off the road, rage is something that we all experience on a regular basis. And maybe we don't always call it rage, maybe we call it anger, or maybe we even call it frustration. Like when your sister takes your shirt for the third time without asking, you're not mad, you're just frustrated. Call it what you want, frustration or anger, but anger is an emotion that we all feel regularly, and it's also an emotion that can easily control our lives. Now, when you think about anger, you might think it's a pretty simple emotion, but the reality is it's actually pretty complicated because we all express anger in different ways. Maybe for you, when you get angry, it overtakes all that you feel and all that you can think about, but no one ever knows you're angry because it's all on the inside. Or maybe you're the opposite. Maybe when you get angry, you tend to just explode and everybody knows how you feel. Or maybe you're somewhere in the middle, and when you're angry, you tend to be passive aggressive and you give people this silent treatment. Even more complicated, anger can sometimes be a good thing. See, it's good to get angry when you see someone being treated unfairly, or when something that you care about isn't being taken seriously, or when you see things happening like racism. In the Bible, we see that Jesus even got angry. There's a story where he got so mad that he started flipping over tables. See, anger can be justified and right, but it can also be destructive. It can also be something that's used to hurt other people. So my question tonight is this: how do we keep anger from taking over? How do we keep anger from bossing us around? So to answer this question, we're going to look at some wisdom from the book of James. And we've talked about the book of James a lot at Gen Now, but just as a refresher, James, the author of the book, was the brother of Jesus, and he wrote this book to Christians after Jesus was on earth. And the thing about James is that he's really blunt, he's really straightforward, and it's pretty easy to understand what he's saying because he doesn't beat around the bush. So let's see what he has to say. In chapter 3, verse 13, James says this: "If you are wise and understand God's ways..." Okay, pause for just 1 second. I know I haven't read much yet, but I have to clarify. James is not saying that he wants to talk to all the smart people. That's not what he means by wise. What he means by wise is someone who learns from life's experiences, someone who knows that their actions can have consequences. So this is what James means when he says, I want to talk to the wise people. Okay, here's how he finishes his sentence. "If you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom." So James is saying that wise people are humble. What does this mean exactly? To be a person of humility, it means that you don't think the world revolves around you. You don't think you're the exception to the rules. You don't think you're better than everybody else. You don't view other people as a means to get what you want. James goes on and he says this: "But if you are bitterly jealous and there is selfish ambition in your heart. Don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying. James is saying if you're tempted to think of yourself as better than other people, don't hide it, but instead call it out so you can get that out of yourself. James keeps going, and this is what he says next. For jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. What James is telling us is that when pride and arrogance get inside of us, it comes out in our actions. He goes on in chapter 4 to speak to this. Let's see what he says. What is causing quarrels and fights among you? I could probably stop right here and you would all have an answer to this question. What causes fights in my life? Oh, that's easy. My parents with unrealistic rules. My siblings who won't stop being annoying. My stepdad who always thinks he's right. My friends who never text me back. But here's the thing. James isn't buying it. He goes on and says this. Don't they come from the evil desires at war within you? In other words, your mom might drive you crazy and your little brother might be really annoying, but what causes the arguments? It's not them, it's you. And more specifically, it's what's in you. And as long as you keep blaming them and their character, you won't be able to get to that problem of anger that's actually inside of you. And you might disagree with this because you feel like the things that you want are things that you have to earn. Things like freedom, trust, respect, responsibility, and you feel like you've done all of the things to earn those and yet you still don't have them, and that's not fair. And you're right. But the thing is, James isn't talking about what's fair and what isn't. He's talking about the fact that the root of your frustration and anger is in you. It's in your heart. It comes when you don't get what you think you deserve. It comes when we don't get what we want. So what do? Well, we have to change the script. When things don't go our way or people are acting in a way that's annoying us, we have to change what we say. Instead of saying, she's so selfish, or he's annoying, or that's so rude, we have to instead say, you know what, I'm not getting what I think I deserve, and that's okay. The thing about anger is it's an emotion that blames. It sees problems in other people and calls them out. And sometimes that's a good thing, but other times it blinds us to what's actually going on inside of us. So when we can change the script and stop looking to other people for the reason that we feel what we feel, we can gain control over our anger instead of it controlling us. Because we have to realize that most often, the problem of anger is in me. It's in you. It's not in other people. So based on what we've talked about so far tonight, here's my question for you. What's your relationship with anger like? Does it control you, or do you control it? If I were to ask your mom or dad, coaches, teachers, brothers, sisters that question about you, what would they say? Because if anger is controlling your relationships with any of those people, it's controlling too much of you. And James tells us that the only way to get past the anger in our lives is through humility. Because a humble person says, you know what, this is not all my fault, but I'm gonna own my part of it, because my part of it is the fact that I'm not getting all that I want right now. So the next time you find yourself angry with your mom or dad or coach or any relationship, ask yourself, what am I not getting that's making me angry right now? Because even if you're not the whole problem, humility means recognizing that you're a part of the problem. And when you can recognize that, anger has much less of a hold on you. Now at this point, you might be saying to yourself, geez, Kristen, this has been a real downer of a message. But here's the good news. As Jesus followers, we follow someone who has led the way in not getting his way. Jesus said no to not having what he deserved and to not getting what he wanted. In fact, the Apostle Paul talks about this in Philippians 2:6-7 when he talks about Jesus, and he says this: though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. See, Jesus had every right to get what he wanted, but he didn't. He gave that up. Paul also says this in that same chapter. Is there any encouragement from belonging to Christ? Any comfort from his love? Any fellowship together in the Spirit? Are your hearts tender and compassionate? Then make me truly happy by agreeing wholeheartedly with each other, loving one another, and working together with one mind and purpose. See, he tells us to be like Jesus, and then he says that Jesus was tender, compassionate, loving, and unified. See, you guys, when we surrender our lives to Jesus, instead of surrendering our lives to our emotions, we get to take back control from our anger and other emotions that get the best of us. So as we wrap up, I have one challenge for you. I want you to talk about this in your small groups, and then I want you to put it into practice this week as you go back to school or online school or when you're around your family or friends. This is my challenge. What is one way that you can choose humility over anger this week? Even if anger is not the emotion that tends to control you most, it's something that we all feel all the time. So how can you take back control and be a person of humility instead? I want you to identify one practical way that you can do that this week. Thanks so much for being here tonight, you guys. Again, sorry I'm not there in person, but I'm really glad I was able to be here through the video. Have a good night.